Hey everyone, finally got around to doing a tutorial video of my Infusion Portal Auth. I'm getting ready to release version 2.8 and I figured I would run through everything start to finish, installing dependencies and configuring the test server to cloning a portal or a website and using the new Payload tab with the new payloader injection set. So this video might take a little bit of time, but bear with me and hopefully it will answer any questions that you have about the Infusion. So to start, for Portal Auth, you're going to need um, Evil Portal 2 to actually use any of the, uh, or to get anything out of the features of Portal Auth. You don't need it to use Portal Auth, but Portal Auth is kind of useless unless if you have Evil Portal to actually display any portals that you clone. So you want to make sure you have both of these infusions. And let's go ahead and start with installing dependencies. So right now the dependencies are downloaded from my actual server at puffycode.com, and Seb wanted me to put a notice up here back in a previous version letting everyone know that, just so that you know that they're not coming from Hack5 servers or anything, but so you'll get a message here that says that. Um, Also, you'll notice that now the dependencies are automatically installed to the SD card, and a symbolic link is created for the userlib Python site packages directory. And the reason for this is that the internal storage of the Pineapple is so minimal um, that I can't actually get all of the dependencies on the internal storage. So let's talk about some of the dependencies that are required for Portal Auth. There are 4 Python libraries that I use, and they are Beautiful Soup, Requests, Tiny CSS, and Setup Tools. So Beautiful Soup allows me to parse the web pages as they're being downloaded and either inject or strip out code, which we'll talk about later when we get to the injects tab. Requests allows me to actually make the web request out to the test server and pulls in the web page. Tiny CSS is a lot like Beautiful Soup and allows me to parse the CSS files that are linked from the web page being downloaded. It works pretty much the same way as Beautiful Soup, but it's made strictly for like CSS rules and classes and makes it a little easier to handle those. Setup tools is almost like one of those meta tools. I mean, it allows me to set up these other libraries on the Pineapple pretty easily, and it might actually come in handy for you later if you do any development on the Pineapple and you need to set up your own libraries. Setup tools is pretty handy for that. So this notice right here just lets you know that all of the dependencies will be installed in SD-depends. If that directory doesn't exist, then it will be created on your SD card. It just has to be that way. So, all right, let's click install. Now, when it says up here, this will take a few minutes, it literally means a few minutes. It has to download the packages and it has to check the MD5 hash to make sure that your download wasn't intercepted at any point. Also, to ensure that I haven't changed the packages since they are being downloaded from my server. That kind of gives you guys peace of mind that I'm not swapping out the packages with anything malicious. So it'll check an MD5 hash, it'll unpack, it'll run the setup configuration script, the Python setup script, and yeah, we will go ahead and stop the video here. Alright, and as you can tell, the small tile refreshes automatically once the dependencies have all been downloaded and installed, and we didn't get any errors, so that's a good sign. Alright, so let's move on to configuring the test server. The test server allows us to check if a captive portal is on the network. And what it does is you put in a website in the test website box and the data that you expect to get from that website. So typically you'll want to point this to a page that has, you know, a single line of text on it. And what'll happen is when it checks for a captive portal, it'll reach out to that site, and if it gets the expected data that it back, then it will say everything's good. You know, there's no portal on the network. But if it returns a full web page that doesn't match that data, then you know there's something blocking you from getting that web page. So And that's pretty much all it says up in here. Um, I recommend that you use your own server or something. You can get free hosting somewhere, and just put a single text file or web page on there. And the reason I recommend that is every time that you load your web user interface for the Pineapple and Portal Auth, the small tile is up, it's going to check for that captive portal, which means it's sending a web request out to my server by default if you check this box to use my server, which you're welcome to use. And there's really no problem with that. But if you don't like the fact that your Pineapple is going to be calling out to my server and its IP address is going, or its internet IP is going to be logged every time that happens, then I recommend you use your own server. But mine is there in case you want to use it and you have no problem with that. So you can check that box or put in your information and then click save. And what's going to happen is it immediately checks for a captive portal, and we can see that we have no captive portal detected. So let's move on to the large tile now. And this is the config page. You're actually able to change the test website and expected data at any time if you want. So if you do change it to another site and it doesn't work out for some reason, you can go back to the default server and it'll repopulate those boxes and you can click save. One thing about this test website box is you're actually able to put in a URL for any website and clone that website. So we'll get to that a little bit later, and I'll show that in a demonstration. So we've already gone over these two. Let's look at the element tags box. Next to each section, you should see a help file, and that'll give you a little bit of information about that section and what type of information to put in there and what it's used for. And so for this one, they're HTML tags that Portal Auth uses to find in a captive portal file for auto authentication. What it'll try to do is use these tags and pull the names and IDs from them and put them into a dictionary along with some random data to try and send to the captive portal's authentication script or whatever it uses. And it will try to actually authenticate the Pineapple with that captive portal automatically. It doesn't always work out so well, so that's why down here we have the client MAC collection section. And what this does is if auto authentication fails, it will use Nmap to scan the network for all current clients and pull their MAC addresses, and it will display them in a field on the or in the small tile of the infusion, and I'll show you that later. But this is just a backup for the auto authentication. Chances are if other people are on the network or on that access point, they've already authenticated with the captive portal and you can just take their MAC. You'll probably want to deauth them first. But really, unless if it's a paid access point, you probably won't need to do any of that. You can just fire up a client on your Pineapple, or even if I'm already in the user interface here for it, I could just search, browse to a web page and it'll get captured by the captive portal and I could authenticate from there, and that would authenticate the Pineapple. So let's move back up to the portal archive section. This is pretty straightforward. This is where your captive portals are stored, the ones that you clone. And you can choose whatever directory you want to put them in. I recommend the SD card. The reason for that is if you're going to store a lot of them and build up a library, then you'll want them on the SD card since, again, the internal storage space of the Pineapple is very small. So when you're done configuring everything, click Save, and it'll be saved. Down at the bottom here, we have an Uninstall Dependencies link, and in the past, I would recommend that everyone uninstall their dependencies before upgrading to a new version of Portal Auth. But now I've implemented that when you click the Install Dependencies button, it automatically cleans up any previous dependencies that were there. But this is useful if for some reason you want to uninstall Portal Auth and you just don't want it anymore. You can click the Uninstall Dependencies link and remove those 4 dependencies that I mentioned earlier that just take up a lot of space. So moving on to the Portal tab, This tab was from version 1 of the Infusion, and I've kind of just left it around just in case if anyone needs it. But it is yet another way to authenticate with a captive portal. It attempts to pull in the web page that test website links to, and if a captive portal is present, it should load it in an iframe here. And you'll be able to fill out the form manually for the captive portal or click OK, submit, whatever's there, and it should authenticate the pineapple with the captive portal. Next is the injects tab. Injection sets were introduced in version 2.4, and they're actually pretty cool. It allows you to inject your own custom code into a portal as it's being cloned. So let's start with the download set button. I have a couple pre-built injection sets that I've made available, and they are downloaded from my website here. If you click refresh list, it will load them, and soon you'll see a third one. Right now there's only two, but I have created a new one called Payloader. So the default injection set is the first one I ever made. It creates an overlay that on top of the captive portal that just prompts the user for credentials, and they pretty much can't get out of it. They have to put it in, and they click submit, and the credentials get logged over here on auth log, which I'll show you in a little bit. Same thing for free Wi-Fi week, but it just goes a step further, uses some JavaScript, and convinces the user that they're on a paid portal or something, and they're 2 days into a free Wi-Fi week as long as they log in with a certain account. And again, all of these are able to be modified pretty easily. You're also able to create your own injection sets. If you go over to the new set section, we'll enter in inject set test, and we'll create a new one. You go to edit injections, and you'll see it in there. And this is the spot where you'll actually input your code. So inject.js is the JavaScript, CSS is obvious, HTML is obvious, and then you have auth.php. And this is your callback script, your server-side script that will actually do the credential logging or anything else that you can think of. For each of these, and I'll use the new payloader one as an example, for each of these, there are restore, backup buttons, and save buttons. An injection set has 4 files in it, like I mentioned before, and along with that, there's a directory called backups, and that backups directory has the same 4 files in it. But what it allows you to do is you can back up the files to those directories, and say you want to modify the injection set, but you want to have a backup just in case because you're not sure if what you're going to do is going to work, or if you ruin it, you can always click restore, and that file comes right back to the backed up version. So each of these has the same features for backing up and restoring. The only one that's different is auth.php. While you can back it up and restore it, there's also an activate now button down here. So when you change anything in an injection set, you'll have to reclone a portal in order to update that code, because it gets injected at the time that the portal is being cloned. The only one that differs is auth.php, because that gets stored in the www no-dog-splash directory so that a victim machine can access it through the web browser, and that's what you want. Since that happens, you'll actually have to activate this script, which sends it to that directory if you make any changes. But you don't have to reclone a portal if all you're changing is the auth.php script, so that's kind of nice. If you make changes to your server-side code, just come down here, click Activate Now, and it'll send it to the no-dog-splash directory. Keep in mind that whatever auth.php script is currently there will be overwritten, but they should be stored in your other injection sets, so that isn't a problem. Let's go back to Manage Injections. So say you've been working on an injection set, and you like it, it's really cool. You even want to try and put it on the forums on Hack5 and get it added to my server here, which I'm glad to do. You can export that injection set. So we'll take inject set test, we'll export, and click download. and we now have that file in a tar.gz format. This is actually really good to do if you're going to upgrade your infusion, or if you uninstall it, reinstall it, if you flash your pineapple or something. It's good to back up your injection sets if they're your custom ones. The three that I've made, the default, free Wi-Fi week, and payloader, will all come standard with it, and you'll also be able to download them from my server. But if you've created any custom sets that you haven't shared with anyone else and you can't get them anywhere else, you'll want to export them before you update the infusion or before you update your pineapple, because they will be deleted when you reinstall Portal Auth. So export them, and then it's simple to import. Go to the import tab, browse for it, and actually let me delete this one first. So I'll delete inject set test, and you see it's gone. It's not there. So we'll browse, and we'll go to my downloads. It's imported, and it's back. So pretty straightforward, simple stuff. And I showed you how to delete them too. You can get rid of injection sets pretty easily. So now moving on to the payload tab. This is the newest feature in Portal Auth, and there's quite a bit to it that we're going to go over. First off, there's two sections to it. Pass is what I call the Portal Auth shell server, and it's essentially a server client manager. It's a basic server script in Python, and you can modify that script directly from the interface, save it, much like an injection set works, restore, backup, all of that stuff, and start it right here. There's the net client side, which is where your payloads will be, and this is all used in conjunction with the payloader injection set, and I'll show you guys that later. We'll actually do a demo of it, but right now, just get you familiar with these interfaces. So I'll move on to authlog. If you are using an injection set that captures credentials, one of mine in particular, one of the default ones, your credentials will show up here. This is where authlog or authphp logs the credentials, and so this refreshes automatically every second, and so when new credentials come in and they get logged, you'll see them appear here. The change log is pretty self-explanatory. I don't have a date next to released yet because I haven't actually submitted this to the Pineapple bar yet, but changelog shows all the different versions. There's quite a few. I've made quite a few changes over the past close to a year now, 8 months or so. But you can always go back here and see what's new in the versions and see how it's changed. Error logs are pretty handy. They've helped out quite a bit in the past. Whenever a script has failed or something, if something goes wrong or it fails, an error log will appear here with a link, and you can delete the error logs to clean it up as well. But the link will open a pop-up with the error, and you can copy that information, go to the Hack5 forums, onto the Portal Auth support thread, and paste that information in there, and I'll take a look at it and see what happened and try to get it figured out. So before I implemented error logs, it was pretty difficult when someone would come to me with an error and I really didn't know what was going on. They didn't know how to describe it. So now with the error logs, it's easy. You just copy and paste. I'll look at it and get it fixed. Okay, so before we get into cloning a portal, let's go back to the payload tab and look over the server code and how to configure Evil Portal for it properly. And what I'm talking about here is this port. So we're set up on port 4443 for the server, and you have to make sure that you set a firewall rule up in Evil Portal in the configs to allow communication on that port, or whatever port you choose. So if you go to the help file for the pass server, you'll notice this text down here. It tells you how to do it. You need to go to the firewall rule set users to router section in the configuration and add this rule right here. You can copy and paste it in. with your port number. So let's go there real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we'll go into Evil Portal, into the configuration, show config, and we'll scroll down until we see users to router right here. So I just add that firewall rule right there, save and close, finalize the configuration. Alright, we'll go back into Portal Auth, go to Payload, and we're set up to receive communication from any victim on the network that has been captured by the captive portal and downloaded our payload and executed it. And you'll see what that looks like in a little bit. So after that, you can start the server, and you'll see that it starts listening. You'll start to see anything in the activity log when people actually execute the payloads. When you get a connection back, you'll see that here. You'll see your list of available targets. Okay, so let's go over to Net Client. And this is, like I said before, the payload section. There's one more thing that you have to configure. You'll need to upload your payloads to their respective sections. And the payloader injection set actually uses JavaScript to determine what operating system the victim is using. Now, that's based on the user agent string, which we all know can be easily modified or spoofed. But in reality, how many people are going to do that when you're doing a penetration test? So what you'll need to do is configure the upload limit. And what happens with this is, by default, the Nginx server that's used on the Pineapple and the PHP configuration limit your uploads to 2 megabytes. And your uploads might be 2 megabytes or smaller, but a lot of times they may not be. And I've included 2 payloads. They're really the same thing, but for different versions, different operating systems. So we have a Windows one and an OS X one, and each of those comes out to about 3 megs. I think the Windows one is about 3 megs, and the OS X one is actually up to about 11 megs because it uses tkinter for its GUI. But this configuration, this configure upload limit button, will automatically change these files with these configurations and reload those configurations into the server. So it only takes about a second. You click the configure upload limit button, and it does it for you. Wait about a second for the configurations to be reloaded, and then you're able to actually upload a payload. So let me show you how to do this here. I've included the code and a zip file with both the code and a compile script for them. You'll have to use Py2exe or cxfreeze or Py2app, whichever bundler you choose for the operating system that you're on, in order to compile these. And I was going to include the payloads, the actual executables. I was going to include a link to my server, but that really isn't a good idea. I wouldn't expect you guys to download payloads from my server and then distribute them to any clients while you're doing a penetration test. Just like I wouldn't download them from any third-party server either. That I would rather generate them myself, because you never know what that payload could be. At the same time that you're compromising systems, I could have extra code in there that allows me to compromise that system as well. So that's not good. Instead, I've included the code here. You can review it. You can copy and paste it, do whatever you want. But I've also included these zip directories here. So I'll show you how to compile them. You can download one. I'm on Windows right now, so I'll do that. I'll extract it. And what you'll want to do is, after you set up Py2exe, which you can download online, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You'll want to open up either command prompt or PowerShell and cd to that directory. So this setup script, which we can actually look at real quick, has all kinds of information in it for the executable, such as a version number, company name, copyright information, and this all is useful because it makes the payload appear more legitimate. My favorite though is the UAC info attribute here, because you can actually require administrator privileges to run the executable. And let's look at the code real quick for the payload. And you'll see that a message box first pops up saying thank you for using NetCLI, and this will reach out to our authentication servers to get you an access key. So what it does is it sets up a listener and another socket to connect back to the pass server. And when it connects back to the pass server, the server will generate an access key and store that access key in a file. The name of that file will be the IP address of this victim, so that later when they enter that access key into the captive portal, the auth PHP script is able to reference it to ensure that it is this person with this access key. So the access keys can't be used by other clients or reused by other clients. So at this point, it'll set up those sockets, and then it will generate a random port between 30,000 and 65,534. You can set those numbers to whatever you want. And it'll start listening. It sends that information back to pass, and the pass server will log it, generate an access key, send it back. The client will actually set up a firewall rule that allows connections onto the listener that it sets up in a separate thread. And the reason that it's nice to have the firewall rule set up in there is typically once that listener is set up, Windows is going to prompt the user saying, do you want to allow this connection? They may hit OK, but most of the time they may not. So we go ahead and take care of that for them. And then what it does is the message boxes will disappear. This runs in the background, and anytime that you connect to it using Telnet or any other application to connect, it'll spawn a new thread for each request and execute those commands, which you'll see a little bit later. So let's go back and actually try to compile this. All you have to do with this script is call Python setup winpy and hit enter. It'll build it, and you'll see two new directories. You'll see a build directory and a dist directory. You want to go into dist, and there's the NetCLI program. And let's go ahead and upload that. So we're on Net Client. We'll go to Browse. Select the one from my dist folder. Upload payload. And we're good. So now, anytime that a Windows client comes to or logs on to the captive portal or loads it, it will modify the button to download the client, and it'll point to that Windows one. Just like if an OS X client comes on there, it'll change that link to point to the OS X one. We can do this for Android and iOS as well. Okay, so next, let's actually clone a portal. We'll use a web page. We'll use this Starbucks Wi-Fi page that's on the internet. So I'll put the URL in here, save it, and now you'll see that our small tile has changed. Now we have a clone portal and auto authenticate features. So we can click auto authenticate and try to do it. It's not going to work right now because there is no actual captive portal. But what it will do is if it fails, it'll start scanning for the Macs since I have that configuration checked, and it'll appear in an overlay here, and you'll see all the MAC addresses in here that you can take. So obviously no Macs have been collected yet. But let's go into the clone portal part, and I'll put in a name for this. I'll call it payloader test. And try to keep these names one word or use underscores just so that there's no issues in moving them around if you activate them while you do this. So you'll see multiple options here. The default is to inject JS, CSS, and HTML, but you have to have an injection set selected. what we'll do is we'll use Payloader. We'll inject all three and we'll activate it immediately. You have these options on the left to strip links, inline.js, CSS, and strip forms. That can be useful if you just want to clone a page, whether you're injecting stuff or not, and you want to rip out any links because you don't want people to be able to click on those. Say there's some JavaScript in there, some inline.js that's screwing up yours, you can strip that out. If there's CSS that's screwing up yours, you can strip that out. Same with forms. Those I don't really use too often, but they're there in case you need them. This activate portal checkbox will actually put the portal in the etc nodog splash htdocs directory, and that's where your active portal is for evil portal. And what this does is it clones it, injects the code into it, and automatically sets it up ready to go. So I'll click start cloning, and it pops up with this message saying payloader test already exists from previous tests that I've done. And so I want to overwrite this. Now keep in mind, if you click OK and you have a portal with that same name in your SD portals directory, it's going to be overwritten and you cannot get it back. So if you want to do that, you can continue, otherwise click cancel and rename it. Now cloning a portal moves a lot faster than it used to. It used to take a long time. Now it should only be about 20 seconds or so, but it could take up to a few minutes depending on how much content there is on the site. So we'll wait for this to finish and continue from there. Alright, we can see that the portal cloned successfully. So now we will start nodog splash. Now I will open up a client that I have ready. Alright, let's connect it to my Poison network. And one thing that I've noticed is this is actually really really good in conjunction with PineAP. I've used Portal Auth and Evil Portal with the PineAP suite using Karma, Dogma, all of that, and it works really well. I've had some really good success with it. But alright, so the portal's been cloned and we should see it. Ask me later. Alright, so here's what it looks like. We have the Starbucks page behind it. Can't click off. Obviously you could right click inspect element, delete node, but average user isn't going to know that. So we go ahead and download the network client. We'll save it to the desktop and we'll go ahead and run it. There's our UAC. So this message comes up saying thank you for using NetCLI provided by Public Network Solutions. To get started, please click OK below and we'll reach out to our authentication service to get you an access key. That's that message we saw earlier in the code. So here's the access key from the server, which we can now see in here. You can see that we have a new target acquired. It gives us the information on the system, port number, all of that good stuff. And our access key is 18375. So let's enter that here. And we're online. Now if I would have entered any other number there, obviously it would have denied me access. Now the cool thing is it's running in the background, so you don't see what's going on with it. Let's go ahead and let's remote into the Pineapple. And I'll just use Telnet real quick. Address is 155. Port 58493. Oh no. Wait. 155. There we go. So now we're in. Here's our client. And you can see that we're in the directory that NetCLI was run from. And you can do things like start notepad. It opens up. Get the task list. I can kill notepad. And leave a little message. Leave a little message on the desktop. Oh no, I'm a victim. And start readme. So you can leave messages, do all that stuff. You're in, you have full administrator rights since they used UAC and it required administrator. So now I'll show you the Mac side. Alright, so I have my Mac set up. Went through the same process as I did on that other client. Unfortunately, I don't have a way of capturing the screen, but you'll see the target appear in a second here. I'll run the NetCLI software on the Mac, and there it is. And it got its own access key and everything. So now we can actually tell it into that one. And you can see we're in the same directory where the payload was executed. So one fun thing to do on a Mac is to open up every single application. Do applications/all, just drop that little bomb, and then just walk out. I'm kidding, that's not very nice, but it is fun. Alright, and whenever you're done, if you want, you have the option to download these logs. It's just a little bit quicker than copying and pasting the text. A couple things to mention: if you start the server again, whatever targets are in your target list will actually be imported back into the server. What's nice about that is, say the client leaves for a little while and they come back and they run that payload again so that they have access through the captive portal, it won't come up with a new target down here with the same information just on a different port. This target list will actually update. You'll see that the target is updated on here, and I can actually display that real quick. I'll go back into my Windows server or Windows system here, and I'll just run this again. You can see we got a new access key, and the port updated here. Target port was updated to 41281, and it updated down here on available targets. So we'll stop running the server. You can download the logs and then clear them. And I believe that covers just about everything for Portal Auth version 2.8. I hope that you guys got something good out of this, that it covered everything. As usual, if you have any questions, I frequent the Hack5 forums, so you can always hit me up in the Portal Auth support thread with any questions. Also in the injection set thread, if you have questions pertaining to those, or if you create your own injection sets, post them there and I'll review them, and if you want I can put them on my site so that they're available for download through the infusion. Alright guys, thanks for watching.